Hello, listeners, and welcome to First Principles. This is the final episode of this year. Well, it's not a full episode. I don't have a guest in the studio with me. It's just me here. But we're doing something a little different. We look back at each of the 8 conversations I had this year. We just had 8 because remember, we restarted First Principles this year in April. We'll reflect on the experience of these discussions with our guests, and then you'll hear a snippet from each episode. If you've heard most of these 8 episodes, well, then you could conveniently skip this episode and come back to the next episode, which will be in 2026. Our first episode, when we restarted First Principles, was with Vidit Atre, the co-founder and CEO of Meesho. The episode was titled Vidit Atre on building a problem-first mindset into Meesho's culture. Honestly, one of my favorite conversations. I don't know whether it was because we were restarting First Principles after a break or whether Vidit and I had never met before, so I didn't have a frame of reference, or it was because Vidit had an incredibly grounded, solid, but lucid set of principles on how he approaches company building, reading habits, family balance, brainstorming, everything, right? It's rare to see someone who's so well thought out in their responses. And I think it reflects in the way Meesho has gone about building itself. And of course, I'm recording this on 23rd December, and Meesho is now a public company as well.
You use the word brainstorming. Now, have you seen the way you've become more effective at brainstorming from the time you started Meesho to today? What's your approach to brainstorming? What sort of, like, when people come to you and say, I want to brainstorm something with you, what do you tell them? This is the best way to get brainstorming help out of me.
So I think when 10 years ago, I was a very young person, and I don't think I was a great systems thinker, right? So what does that mean? I'm saying you bring me a problem, I'll give you a solution right away. Correct?
You're
So
violating your own principle of just not jumping to solutions.
Yeah, but because there's so many things happening.
I get it. No, because you're also a fresh founder back then.
Yes,
right?
so I'm saying I was young, so I would believe everything can be solved with hustle,
Correct.
hard work, all of that, right? Like that's
And especially
the
as
thing.
a founder, when someone comes to you, your first tendency is, here's the answer. Or
Correct.
here's the solution.
Over time, that has changed, where I try not to give answers. I just try to give them some principles of how, if I'm in your position, how will I think about it? You brought this, the principle is not to jump into a solution, but to think about the problem. I'll say, hey, if I'm in your position, I will ask, is this a real problem of the customer? I will ask, hey, are we being really user first when we are making this decision? Are we thinking long term or not? Because I've realized, like, if you want to design a system, you create short-term value by giving them a solution. You create long-term value by coaching people of how to come to that solution themselves. Because you do
It's
that
like
once,
that classic
twice, thrice.
Analogy of teaching a person how to fish
Yes.
versus giving them fish.
Correct. So there's another way of people say, like, be a clock builder rather than telling time, right? Like I can tell them time every time, or I can tell them how to build a clock and they can look at the time themselves.
All
So that's the difference between being a systems thinker or just do this right now. I think that's been the biggest difference.
All right. How are you as a person different? I mean, what's your personal life? Or what are you on the... I mean, do you have weekends? Like, for example, let me not presume that now that you're a dad, I'm guessing that you're trying to claw back more personal time. But what is Vidit the person? What are your interests?
Yes. So I think before my daughter was born, I used to work on Saturdays and not work on Sundays. Now I still have to work some weekends, but try not to work on weekends because I want to spend a lot more time with my daughter. During the week, whatever I do is just not enough time. And many times I get surprised by she can now do this, she can now do that, and I didn't see her do it for the first time.
Right, the milestones. You missed a key milestone.
Yes, like it'll happen when I'm in office, right? Like someone will just send me a video of how she's scrolling and now she's saying this particular word and all of that, right? Like, and
Right.
when you miss it and someone else does it, it's a weird feeling, but you understand, right? Like that's okay. So I get, in general, I've always been someone who gets a lot of positive energy from family. So even earlier, most of my weekends when I'm not working was spent with family. I'm not someone who will just go out and do something else. Mostly with my wife. My parents live close by. My in-laws live close by. So it's the good thing has been that family has always been close by.
So in some senses, your not interest, but your passion is bimodal. It's Misho and family. Right?
Yes.
During the week or like 6 days, it's Misho, and then the rest of the time it's family. In that
Mostly
sense,
family,
yeah.
right? Like I'm generally not out doing anything else, right? Like I'm mostly trying to spend time. And that was true for the last 10 years. Like since I've been married, of course, even more, but it had mostly been like this. I have certain hobbies that I enjoy that basically, again, balance stress in my life. Like for example, I love tennis. So I play it as much as I can, maybe 3 times a week, 2 times a week. And I watch as much as I can once in a while. I like to read. I read a lot of history mostly. Mostly because I'm trying to figure out why are things how they are, and I feel like there are a lot of answers to that in history of how things have evolved. So I like to read a lot. I like to play a
Do you
lot.
have a book that you'd recommend that you like? I mean, from let's say history,
The many books,
or
but
something that you're reading recently, or
But
in the
I'll give
recent time.
one the book that I think I really enjoyed. I basically got a lot of learning that I didn't think I will get as much. There's this book called These Truths by Jill Lepore. It's a book on the history of the United States. And I sometimes tell people that book is the best startup book I've ever read. It's about like how US was a startup that
Right,
just
how the founding fathers came together.
like
It's-
very anti-tradition and anti-legacy because they were trying to get away from UK, and they said we will do everything opposite. Like the same way when you are a 24-year-old who wants to start up will say I will not do how traditional companies have done because that streak of being defiant, right? Like that is there. I think when I read that book from the history to where it is today, it just felt like the best ever startup created. So I got a lot of learnings just in how to set up a culture, an organization that I think will continue to innovate over a long time period. I think there are a lot of learnings from there, but then a lot of books actually.
Got it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with your life right now?
I'm decently happy. There's always days when I feel I didn't do enough at home. I didn't do enough at work. But
I mean, if this were a form, you can only enter a number. In
maybe
the
7 or 8. 7 or 8. I think some days it feels like 9. Some days it feels like 6. Because I always feel like I don't think I'm able to give the right amount of time both sometimes between family and at work.
Got it.
But I think a good balance where everyone feels
Got it. All right.
slightly unhappy.
Is there something that you've geeked about recently, which something, a new hobby, a new product, a new service, something that you tried out, which you've been excitedly telling everyone about? Anything like that?
Geeked about. I'll tell you a book that I just read recently.
Yeah.
This book is called Impro. It's basically a book written by Keith Johnstone, I think, like 70 years ago, who was a very famous theatre professor in the UK. And it's a book on improv, right? And I was reading this book because someone recommended it to me around storytelling, right? Like, and I generally find it, again, it's a topic of my interest. So I said, let me just pick this up. And I was fascinated by that book. It was about the principles of improv. How do you become really good at improv? And number of lessons I could take from my life from that is crazy. Like the first chapter just blew my mind. It just talked about like
It
how.
must be rare.
Huh?
I mean, if you read a lot of books, it's very rare that the first chapter of a book just blows your mind. Because most
Absolutely.
of the times it's like, it's a good book.
It does not
Or
happen.
Yeah.
The first book is around status. So the title is Status. And it talks about how being more observant around like the status difference between different people on stage makes you create that setup much, much better. You can just elevate that scene.
Now that you say it, I can see stand-up comedians constantly using it when they pick people up or refer to people, etc. Interesting.
Correct.
This book sounds fascinating. I'll definitely buy.
So it's basically, again, there's something I geeked out about. Like I thought, someone told me, I'm saying improv storytelling. First of all, can't see the connect, but let me try it. But I was mind blown.
Got it. Where and how do you read books?
Most
Physical
people,
books or Kindle?
I think it's a mix of both. When I travel, I take a Kindle because it's hard to kind of take books around. But when I read at home, I generally read it from a book.
What's your reading time like? Like, I mean, when do you find the time to read?
On a daily basis, I read before I sleep. So I will read for like 45 minutes in my bed.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Um,
You've consistently managed to kind of keep that habit?
Yes, it also helps me wind down after work. So it helps me sleep well as I read something every day. Otherwise, my reading time now has become quite volatile. I think before my daughter Ira was born, I used to read a lot on the weekends. Now it happens here and there. When she's sleeping, I read. Then she gets up and that does not happen. So it's not very consistent on the weekends anymore, but like 45 minutes per day in the evening.
The next episode was with Sahil Barua, the co-founder and CEO of Delivery. And I traveled to Goa and met Sahil at a small studio in Porvorim, if I'm not mistaken. Well, the episode was titled Sahil Barua on why delivery is the antithesis of moving fast and breaking things. Again, Sahil is a person that I'd communicated with a few times earlier in the past, but never met in person. Comes across as very thoughtful, very calm, very deliberate, very zen, if I might say. He's also a runner, and I've seen that in many runners as well. Our conversation focused a lot on the transition from how Sahil started Delivery and the business to how he scaled it and the lessons along the way. And I think, so many key insights there on what to do, how to think about when you're trying to build an organization or institution that outlasts you. We talked a lot about various aspects of the delivery business itself, especially around decentralization, the speed at which you operate, what trends they will fight over the next decade, and of course, Meesho, whose subsidiary Valmo is also in many ways competing with delivery. That was unplanned for, but as it turns out, the last episode was with Vidit, and this one was directly with Sahil of Delivery.
I want to go back to something that you said about multi-decadal visions. A lot of what you explained about, you said when you started Delivery in 2011, you folks put a vision saying that this is what we want to make, etc. And a lot of the stuff that you've made, including mesh networks, design, thinking from the bottom up, I get all of that. Sitting in 2025, when you look forward and you look at, let's say, 2035, what do you think is going to be the decadal challenges, or what's the next unlock? I'm not asking for any forward-based guidance or projection because I understand you're a public limited company, but I'm asking purely from an evolution of delivery, and especially because you also said that everything now is coming together. You folks do all sorts of things now, right? Not just one or two markets. So when you take everything that you've done, everything that you are, and you look forward 10 years, what's the next waves that you think you will have to be ready for? Or
the biggest challenge and the biggest wave that will affect logistics over the next 10 years, two things. One is a fundamental change and there will be massive localization here of what industrial automation and robotics will look like. And I'll explain why. The conventional wisdom has always been that Indian labor is inexpensive and therefore,
Right.
that's
Throw
sort of
people at
how,
the problem.
throw people at the problem and, build these sort of networks of micro entrepreneurs and whatever gig workers who can do things at, very low cost. My view is that doesn't hold up logically for two reasons. One is productivity adjusted labor costs in India are pretty high. They're actually not very low. The second is
By that you mean that even though the salary that you pay to an Indian may be low on global standards, the productivity of that Indian is much lower
Yes.
than global standards. So
Yes.
therefore, it doesn't look all that cheap
No
once you
longer.
adjust for productivity.
Which is one. The second, more insidious problem is that those wage rates are unsustainable. You can't have a country where, and I've said this I don't know how many times, you can't have a country which is divided into people who live in condos and people who deliver to people who live in condos. It's that's a recipe for sort of long-term
Social
failure.
unrest.
Social
I've said
unrest,
that.
it won't work.
Yeah, that's true.
And I struggle to see how you actually get to a point where you find enough people to feed this machine unless you kind of make the job much, much easier, right? Going out and driving, it's going to be 50 degrees in Delhi in another month. We're already trying to figure out, saying, how do, in good conscience, I can't send people out at 2 in the afternoon saying, go and deliver packages
And
to
the
people.
delivery times, especially in quick commerce, coming down and
10
down.
minutes,
It's like
15
10
minutes.
minutes, 12 minutes, 5 minutes. I mean, I hate to say this where I stay, again, because I stay in Bangalore. It's where a lot of these experiments are like, really dense. 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes are delivery times.
You have to think of alternate forms. I understand the consumer need. I understand the value proposition that, sure, I'd love to have things in 8 minutes and 10 minutes. But the solution is not to put a underpaid man on a bike in a bad environment and get him to drive faster. You have to think about
Because
design.
he has no other options.
Because there's
some
no
level.
other options. And sort of you can always abstract it away by saying he's an independent contractor and he's making this decision for his life. But that's not correct. When you limit the number of choices, there's only one
Absolutely.
decision. So I think that is the real challenge in India. How do you make this sustainable? How do you make the labor situation sustainable? How do you make the job easier? Lifting boxes, and putting them into trucks which are massive. We're aware of the fact that it leads to long-term sort of, health complications. So things like, for example, exoskeletons are an interesting area. Loading devices are an interesting area. So all of this will change. The problem is you can't bring solutions from Europe or from the US or elsewhere because the Indian challenges are very complex. You have
Not even from China.
even China is interesting, but very different from India as we've seen. They do high throughput pretty well, but they don't do it in the kind of area constraints that Indian cities present. We went to Shanghai to ZTO's facility. It's about, whatever I remember, is 800,000 square feet. Lovely piece of real estate, right? And doing maybe, whatever, if I remember right at that time, about 1 million packages a day or thereabouts. Not bad. But we realize in India, when we do 1 million packages a day out of one of our largest facilities, the extent of space we have is about 240,000 square feet. So I have to produce more out of less real estate, which is just because India is the way it is.
And also because real estate is more expensive in India.
More expensive, our cities are denser, topographies are more complicated. So you have to figure out local solutions. So I think that's going to be one big wave. And the second is, from a software standpoint, obviously everything that goes with the robotics is one piece. But the second big wave that we're going to have to figure out how to design around to build reliability into our networks is climate change. It's a humongous problem at this point in time. In any given month, our network is disrupted in 5 states with unseasonal rain, unseasonal heat, it's been a landslide or something of the sort, and we need to figure out how to build resilience towards all of these events. I think those are the two big sort of challenges and big waves that Indian logistics companies will be very, very hard pressed to deal with. Everything else it'll change. Roads will change, size of infrastructure will improve, airports will get better, truck farms will become larger. All this is kind of par for the course. It'll happen in any case.
I must ask you this, since you mentioned automation / robots, etc. I mean, this drone-based delivery, right? I always struggle to figure out how widespread and sustainable it will be. And I say this having read, so on one hand, you have all this news that it's coming, it's the next big thing, it's going to take over everything. And a certain amount of skepticism, really, is it going to become the same? But then there's also very real examples where it is happening. So it's not hypothetical, it's not technology demonstrators. There are countries around the world where drone-based delivery is happening. My question to you is that, is this like, when you look at drone-based delivery, and again, when you look at it over, let's say, a 10-year cycle, how inevitable do you see it as?
I think it's an extremely useful format for extremely specific kinds of deliveries. And we have our own platforms that we use for some, we're trying to use for some of these. I'll give you classic examples, right? Disaster relief. It makes a lot of sense for you at that point to have a fleet of UAVs. You've had floods in J&K. The roads are impassable. The only way to get there is by drone. Then the form factors, getting them right is very important. I think people are still experimenting, so people are going as far as saying 800 kilogram payloads and so on, but those are going to be very hard to build out. I think what you need is fleets of maybe 5 to 8 kilogram, 40 to 80 kilometer kind of endurance limits. They make sense there. Delivery of medicine, for example, highly specific, especially because in rural areas it can be too hard to get life-saving medicine to people in time. I think that makes sense. I'll give you an example in India, which I've always wondered about. There's no clearance for this, and we'd like to perhaps try at some point. Organ delivery between hospitals. Right? Literally, Indian cities will not allow you to move an organ between two hospitals in time. Can you use drones there? That becomes exciting. But should your pizza be delivered by drone? I'm firmly in the no camp. I don't see
It's interesting that you should say that, because many high-rise buildings these days come with a helipad on top.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we've thought through that, those people may be in an emergency, so perhaps let's build helipads, and so but we haven't optimized for something which is much easier actually, right? Like, in a life-saving situation, a drone is much smaller, much safer, etc. But we don't have them. All right.
Next up, episode 44 with Manish Sabharwal of TeamLease. Episode title was called Manish Sabharwal of TeamLease on creating great ancestors, India's development journey and regulatory cholesterol. With Manish, who I've known for a while now, it's always, it's like a quote a minute. It's an analogy a minute. I don't know how he does it, but it's impossible to have a conversation with him without him using extremely relevant analogies or quotes to illustrate the points that he's making. It's always sharp. And we covered a lot of ground. We talked about policy, we talked about shortages, we talked about India, we talked about the future, we talked about education, meritocracy. I think it was a wonderful conversation, which was very different from most of the conversations that we have on First Principles, because less about TeamLease and more about so many of the things that we see around us in India, with which Manish is involved as well.
Large population, shortages,
regulatory cholesterol leading to connections being more important than the sweat of your back, or the sweat of your brow, or the strength of your back, or the courage in your heart. As we become more meritocratic, and India is becoming more meritocratic, right? IPL, OTT and private equity have made Indian cricket has become more meritocratic that Ranji Trophy could not make it. OTT is making it much more meritocratic than Bollywood ever was or is. And partly Bollywood is dying because it's not moving beyond their kids. And private equity was really important for people like us who believed that you could not start a company if you didn't have money. So I think business has become more meritocratic. I think cricket has definitely become more meritocratic, and so has. So my sense is that it's clear to me that cultural explanations are a rabbit hole that is totally unnecessary to explain in India. You can explain in India's problems or its opportunities or its strengths with obvious sort of much more logical explanations than stuff like we are racist, so we are this or that.
All right. You said that you've read a book a week for roughly 42 years. I'm sure you cannot get to that kind of consistency without evolving some kind of discipline or habits or patterns to be able to do that. What are yours?
I mean, routines are a sign of ambition, as Napoleon used to say, right? I mean, I have clear routines. I get up very early in the morning. I usually sleep very early. I work out every day. But I read 7 newspapers a day. I know people find that, but I find the serendipity of running into what you're not looking for much better with the curated
Which are
content.
those newspapers?
I mean, across FT, Wall Street Journal, Economic Times, Mint, Indian Express, Times of India, I mean, Deccan Chronicle. I mean, I find that an intellectual sort of buffet, which is, and then it allows me to dive deeper into what I want, rather than, I'm not sure the online world is yet moved to where the serendipity of what you're not looking for but need to know is replicated.
That's a bug in the online world, because in the online world, the job of an algorithm is to be able to give you more of what you
So do you
like.
think the
Yeah.
online world will ever create that serendipity, or it's not a design possibility?
Well, I suppose it's already happening if you look at, but not at scale. I think scale kills everything. So if you look, for instance, at the federated social media world of Mastodon, the default there is no algorithm. It's you follow people and you see everything linearly, and in some senses, it takes us back to the pre Facebook feed days, right? So I don't use Twitter or Facebook, etc. and stuff like that. I use Mastodon. But again, I think the point that I want to mention is that when you do this, you have to forego scale and global success, because the moment you chase scale, automatically the incentives change, and then you must do what will get you the most amount of engagement, people, users, etc., and then it becomes a rabbit hole. So I think we're in this phase right now where there is enough of a dissatisfied population globally, which is seeking alternatives to various sorts of late stage capitalism games. But I would argue that it's probably like 2%. Right, so there will be these bubbles
And
of
what
2%.
do you see as late-stage capitalism's issues? Inequality.
If you look at, let's say, the way Meta or Facebook is evolving, if you see the way how ChatGPT is optimized, quote-unquote, for sycophancy, in order to be able to tell you what you want to hear, etc. Everything is optimized for more engagement, more revenue, and like to go back to something that you said earlier, who knows what's going to happen in the future? We are not responsible for it. So I don't know, maybe I'm not that optimistic on that count. It looks like a doom loop around a lot of digital technology products. And I think it's reached this stage where many people are saying these have destroyed democracy, these have destroyed relationships. We know what the science says about use of technology devices for children, for adults, etc. Right? So there is this, a lot of people want something different from it, but my sense is it's a very small market. So whatever products emerge to cater to this market will either continue to be niche, or they'll start out at niche, but at some point, especially if they're venture funded, they will be forced to adopt the very techniques that they sought to counter.
Yeah, but there are enough people in the world dissatisfied with the status quo.
Absolutely.
Right?
2% of any large market is not a bad market.
No, but is it 2% only?
I just feel like, think about it, right? Like, what is the percentage of people who use, let's say, WhatsApp for messaging versus those who use Signal? Right? It would probably be 2% or different. Like, even though Signal is fundamentally and from the ground up much more secure, encrypted, impossible for someone else to tap into all of those. But it doesn't have the social networks that WhatsApp has, etc., all of that, right? How many people are going to give up using Instagram for an unknown federated social media service where you can share videos? Not many, because the
network effects are
network effects. I think it's all connected. Like, I don't use WhatsApp, and it's one of the biggest things that I think people ask me that how do you manage to run a company without using WhatsApp, as though the two were kind of
Connected,
related or connected. So it goes back to maybe.
But you think the next 10 years will be much better than the last 10 years
I
for
think so,
India
and I do think so, and I believe that as an Indian, as an entrepreneur, as a parent, I say that as a parent because I do look at my son's generation. He's 15, and I do believe that I feel like I'm Gen X. The next generation was millennial, so I feel like millennials got caught in the technology trap. Poor folks, they just they were there when the entire internet, technology, social media boom took off. Gen X was a little late to it, so we were already kind of old and we didn't natively take to it. Millennials bore the brunt, and I think by the time Gen Z came up, schools had wisened up, parents had wisened up. So I feel like Gen Zs are much more cognizant of harms of technology and how best to use technology, etc. So when I look at my son, I'm much more confident that they are less likely to sleepwalk into accidental or pernicious use of technology than probably the generation that precedes them.
Ultraviolet Automotive's Narayan Subramaniam on tinkering, designing, and learning by discarding. Well, I met Narayan and his co-founder at the Ultraviolet office in Indranagar, which I'd driven past many years without ever realizing this. And this was after the episode. They built a fascinating company, incredibly interesting and powerful electric bikes, which don't look like electric bikes at all, which look like proper racing bikes. I don't ride a bike. I think, lost habit too much of it. But if I did, I'd definitely love Ultraviolet's bike. The conversation really was about how two friends who were tinkerers went to different places, came together, and decided to build a company by just continuing down that path of tinkering to say, what more can this be? How big can this be? And I think that really is the essence of entrepreneurship in many ways. You start small. You never think about, is this going to be the world's best company? But you essentially go along the way and it gets better and better. And each time it gets better, become more ambitious about what more is possible.
All right. It's a great place for me to interject and ask, what is the Ultraviolet brand?
Right. So Ultraviolet, it's our three core pillars are design, technology, and performance. So whatever segments now today, we have two products in the market with the F77 and a variant of the F77. We've announced the next three that are already slated to come out through 2026. And our decision making on when to launch what has been all about our ability to maintain our edge.
Sorry, Narayan, I'm going to ask you this question again. If I were to ask you, I'm a potential consumer.
Sure.
What is Ultraviolet? What does Ultraviolet stand for? I mean, just in a sentence.
Bringing
or
you
two.
the future faster than competition. If I was to simplify it to one sentence, it would be this.
So, right now would it be fair to say it's a performance motorcycle brand, a performance electric motorcycle company?
Yes, because of the product that we have today, yes. But
right, that's why I said now. Just like
yes.
Tesla, when it started, had only one model. But so therefore, if I zoom out, what is the Ultraviolet brand's ambition then?
I think the ambition, like I said, is to experiment and commercialize tech that is either leading to better user experience, enhanced safety, or more performance. And performance is also relative. If you're talking about a scooter segment, the scooter that we've launched today is 2x the performance of competition in the market today. But it would not compare to a similar motorcycle segment performance where the threshold is very different. So performance also ties into reliability and robustness. When we talk about, is the tech going to last you your entire lifetime of ownership? One concern people have with electric vehicles is, do I need to replace my battery midway through my ownership cycle? And batteries, we know, are anywhere from 30 to 40% of the cost of the vehicle, depending on different formats of vehicles. And we had to optimize for that first, and most of our IP that we built in ultraviolet in the early stages was on the battery tech. And today we offer 8-year and a 8 lakh kilometer warranty. Insane. It's not a marketing pitch. It is data driven based on our test cycles and how much we are able to offer that transparently to the
All
world.
right. A few questions just to kind of get a sense of ultraviolet. Can you give us some sense of ultraviolet, the company, in terms of either, let's say, revenue or number of people, etc.? I mean, how big is
Sure.
ultraviolet?
Okay, so today the team would be cumulatively about 500 people in the company, 250 on R&D, about 150 on operations, sales, marketing, finance, all the other operations, and 100 plus on the production side. So that is the scale of.
Good. And how big is your customer base today? Since when have you been selling? Actually, when did you roll out your first consumer bike, and how many ultraviolet bikes and customers are there on the road today?
Sure. So we started the company in 2016. Estimated 5 years to launch. COVID happened. 5 became 7. Also allowed us to take a step back. We were working on modular batteries when we started because we weren't clear if India is going down the way of charging or swapping at that point. Then it became more and more clear that if you have reasonably fast charging and enough and more range on the vehicle, then you don't have to optimize for swapping. Swapping also comes with the risk of putting heavy capital into a network, and the network itself might go obsolete with battery chemistry changing. So that pivotal shift in storage strategy that move happened during the COVID reset period. So we launched our first batch, the pilot batch of vehicles in 2023, a smaller batch of vehicles only in Bangalore. 2024 is when we launched the pan-India expansion. So 24 onwards, the first batch of vehicles also got a lot of new features which came in with the Mark II. The F77 Mark II is what we called the current generation of vehicles. All of that was designed to be adaptable to our early adopters as well. We didn't want any sort of early adoption remorse to kick in. So we took some extra effort to make it compatible with the hardware systems on the first batch of vehicles. Traction control came in. Regenerative braking went from 3 levels to about 9 levels, where we recover today about 30% of input energy is recovered via regen. A lot more safety and security features came into the vehicle, and all of this translated back to the first generation owners. Cumulatively, till date, I think we'd be close to about 2,000 vehicles pan-India. Today, live in 15 cities across the country. And I'm just coming back from our launch in Europe as well. So 2025 is going to be the pilot expansion in Europe. We've launched the vehicles in Germany, France, Netherlands, also in UK, Italy, Spain and Portugal is going to follow soon. So this is where we are.
Sound like a very stupid question, but why did you launch in Europe?
Right.
And I mean, I'll clarify my stupid question with saying, let's say, for example, just to use an example, right? Ather
Right.
has not launched in multiple countries around the world,
Right.
I'm just using Ather as an example to say that there is a parallel universe where ultraviolet says, you know what, we're going to focus only on India.
Sure.
And the market is big enough, etc. But obviously you've chosen a path where you say we are going to focus on India also, and we are also going to expand to Europe.
Sure.
Why did you decide it's time? Because it will call for additional management bandwidth, resources, attention, etc. from you. Why did you decide to do that?
So if you look at it from the vision of what we were building, like I said, the companies like Sony and Apple were always attempts that inspired us, which also brings a global market into play. So that was always part of our vision, which led to decision making on a lot of hardware and software right through 2016 to 2023, where we had international requirements and certification compliances in mind as we designed the vehicle itself. Now coming to why Europe, why now? So we've been in India for about 15 months now. Active sales now, the ramp up has begun across the country, pan India. By end of 25, we should be in close to 100 odd 100 plus locations in the country. So India has now a certain amount of predictability in operations and scale up, from production to the dealer partners to the retail scaling up. This is a pilot in Europe, and a very important pilot because there is a very strong market gap in Europe. If you look at Europe, EV adoption in cars has been quite strong. With scooters, not so much, because the range threshold in Europe is higher. So a 3 kilowatt or a 4 kilowatt battery pack, which does 100, 150 odd kilometers of range in India, might not be suitable for the Europe requirements. Real estate in the cities is super expensive. Most of the people live on the suburbs of the city, and average distances traveled are easily 100 kilometers a day, even on a two-wheeler. So even the scooters that are doing well in Europe, the BMW C04 comes with a 8.5 kilowatt hour battery pack, right? So battery capacity is a major factor for Europe. Average riding speeds are higher. Average distances on a daily basis is also higher. Perhaps one of the reasons why what works as a commute vehicle in India might not exactly fit in the same format in Europe. Second, when I spoke about the gap in the market, the mid-segment of motorcycles, where we are now positioned with the F77. By mid-segment, I mean the 400 to 600 cc power band of motorcycles. There is no electric option available in Europe. You have the IC engine options from Honda, Yamaha, KTM, BMW, all of these companies, which are all priced between 7,000 to about 10,000, 11,000 euro. That is the range of what all these machines cost.
For episode 46, I traveled to Mumbai to meet Anand Jain of CleverTap, who I've known for many years now. The episode title was Anand Jain of CleverTap on starting with nothing and learning, building, and leading as you go along. As turns out, Anand and I have been colleagues many moons ago at Network 18, and we've known each other since then. But it was still a fantastic revelatory conversation because Anand is the most humble, introspective, and reflective of founders that I've met for First Principles, and I've met quite a few. We talked about Anand's humble beginnings, how he started with virtually nothing, and then everything that he learned, and he continues to learn, he tries to channel back into becoming better as an individual. And on CleverTap itself, a company which started, again, a bunch of friends coming together, sitting and coding the first version on their dining table to the scale that it is right now. Do go listen to it.
Anand, you just said that when we were just before about to record right now, you said that if you take the title of your podcast, First Principles, was logical conclusion, I shouldn't be where I am today. Why? Why did you say that?
Uh,
And you said this unprompted. I didn't tell you what learnings do you have from First Principle. You just said I shouldn't be here today, and yet here we are, and here you are.
yeah, I think because of a few things. One is intelligence levels, maybe not very smart, extremely hardworking though, but not very smart. Not a good educational degree. Have never studied computing or engineering formally, right, in school, and you know, and B2B, like, we never had a background on B2B, right? Like, never were neither on the buyer side. As engineers, you don't buy B2B products, like, and as a founder, like, you have to start everything from first principles, literally, right? And funnily, that's one of the values of the company. That's number one value is first principles. Figure out things from first principles. Of my own life, when you are in the 8th grade and you have to figure out, okay, well, how do I get food on the table? Like, life threw a curveball at me, and my mom, like, I lost my dad when I was 12. And then from there on, like, instead of focusing on, like, you have two choices, right? You focus on studies, or you figure out how to make, money happen. How do you get a meal on the table? And then everything from there on is first principles. Like, you study, you work very, very hard, because, algebra is not going to get money on the table. Geometry is not going to help you. History of India is not going to help
Fox
out.
Pro will.
Foxpro will, yes. You start writing.
You started writing code in 1994.
Correct.
And like I remember Fox Pro because I'm in your age bracket, but most people today will not, right?
Yeah.
How did that come along?
So Foxpro is funny. I was trying to get admission into a college. Of course, with like I said, I'm not very academically inclined, so I did not have good marks. And in Ahmedabad, there was no college willing to accept me. So I happened to run into one of the influencers, and I don't mean online influencer, like a college influencer.
1994, they were
1994, there was nothing online, right? So someone knew someone who knew someone, and said, well, you look like a good guy, I'll try to see if I can get the admissions done, right? So uh, that person also had a computer at home, and through that person I got, not my first time on a computer, I had a school lab where we did BBC micros, and there was a Vikram Sarabhai lab in Ahmedabad. I used to bicycle about 12-15 kilometers, and I'd get access to half an hour to a computer there. But through him, Foxpro happened. So what happened was we got enrolled in AppTech in that era, and then they started with the basics of computing, okay, well, this is
a CPU.
exactly, this is input, CPU, output,
Right.
and they were teaching us WordStar and Lotus 123. So these were like precursors to Word and Excel and Sheets and all that, right? So they were teaching us that, and we would spend time at this friend's home because he had a PC like a 386, right? Actually, he had a 286 with a CGI monitor. So you get 4 colors, right? That was the monitor. And one day his dad came and challenged us, like, you guys are wasting time, you could do something productive. If you have the, if you're truly worth your salt, can you write a program for advocates? So this friend's father was in the High Court. He was a peer to Chief Justice. And he had access to lawyers. And we said, okay, uncle, maybe we'll go and figure out. And like I said, without any formal training in all of that, you start the requirements gathering and you figure out what does an advocate need. Well, they have court dates and they need to figure out which client is going when, fees paid and not, and a little calendar of sorts of appointments. So then and in AppTech, they're teaching you WordStar and Lotus 123. So you get hold of DBase, which was the precursor for Foxpro. You start writing in DBase. And then we figured out, oh, Foxpro is a better language. So you get hold of, now of course, you have to first figure out how to install Foxpro. That means someone has to have the floppies for Foxpro 2.0. So you get hold of Foxpro floppies, you install it, and then you start programming in Foxpro with nothing to help you.
Floppies being floppy disks.
Floppy disks.
And another thing which nobody
Though,
knows.
1.4-inch floppy drives, floppy disks, and you start figuring out things. Like there is no manual that comes with it. There is no Stack Overflow. There is no Chat GPT to ask. You have to go figure out, okay, you have this thing. How do you program? There's a lot of trial and error. But when you have 8 hours from 10 in the night to 6 in the morning, there's a lot you can figure out.
Got it.
So the entire night we would program, and in about 4 months we had a software.
And then you had roughly 40 High Court advocates who were using.
That is correct. Yes, yes, we did that. So we would go and install, and of course, in few cases we figured out they did not even have a computer to begin with. Some people who had a computer it was just there as a vanity thing, they didn't know what to do with it. So we had to teach them a bit, okay, this is a software, you can use this. And it sounded very awkward, why would someone use a computer to figure out when to meet people? If I want to meet people, I'll just meet them. What's the scheduling and calendaring and all that?
Got it. That's 1994.
Correct.
Between 2012 to 2013, you were the head of engineering and IT for Network 18.
Correct.
And among all the first principles founders that I've met, you're the only one who's been a former colleague.
Correct.
Because during that time, I was also at Network 18. I was at Forbes India as a journalist, and you were part of Network 18 as their head of engineering and IT. And I remember, of course, we knew each other back then. And I was looking through my emails to see when we exchanged mails right after you left. I think somewhere around Feb 2014, there was an email from you to me saying, yo, and here's my email. Let's keep in touch.
Yes.
It was a Hello Anand email, which is also your Twitter ID. And of course, you would go on to start the company, which you're going to talk about today. And then, I'd start a separate company. But it's very interesting. I'm sitting in Bombay today in your office. I'm connected to a Wi-Fi called WizRocket,
Correct.
right? What is WizRocket?
So, WizRocket was the original name of Clever Tap, right? When we started, we were inventing a technology, right? We were inventing like the backbone of MarTech, right? A better data technology. And we wanted to give it like something like, we didn't want to use Swahili or Hindi or Sanskrit or any of that. Like, we wanted it to sound proper English, a good name. And of course, all the rest of the constraints, the domain has to be available, social media handles, and something that rolls off the tongue nicely. And if you're on a phone with someone and you tell the name of the company,
So you said MarTech, that's marketing tech.
marketing technology, yes, marketing automation, marketing technology,
Right.
and we wanted
We started in May 2013.
correct.
Let me take you back then. Right?
Yeah.
You folks started, you, Sunil, and
Suresh,
the three of you, who are also colleagues at Network 18, came together and started WizRocket in May 2013. And you
Correct.
got your first customer in October 2013 itself.
Correct.
Right?
Quote unquote customer, because non-paying customer, like
Fair. Who was that customer? What was the product that you sold them, and what was the product that they bought? By buying and selling, I'm not essentially implying what was the money, but what was the product that you managed to sell within just a few months of starting the company? What was that opportunity?
yeah. So we when we left Network 18, the three of us, like you have all the time in the world, started writing code for a marketing automation, like a technology solution, right? And we built like a little scaffolding. We built like a
Three of you were coding together.
three of us were coding. Um, Sunil is the eldest, like so he had to revise some books and all that, and I had to go through some of the other, like just to brush up, like because you're writing code from scratch, right? And we used to huddle around Sunil's dining table in his home, and we would be writing code for like I would say 18 to 20 hours straight every single day, right? So there are no distractions, there are no emails to get to and all.
Episode 47, back to Bangalore again, and I met Trilegal's co-founder Rahul Matan on, the episode was titled On the Firm, the Partnership and the Principles. This was a wonderful conversation. It's rare that you get to talk to in one of India's not just top corporate lawyers, but also the founder of one of its top corporate law firms, and in some senses get them to be candid and unguarded and explain how they approach business, life, growth, entrepreneurship. A huge thanks to Rahul for being candid on this. But I think if you want to understand the services business or the law firm business, I think that's a great place to start. And I think what Rahul and his colleagues have built at Trilegal is truly something that stands the test of time.
What is it that we seem to be talking about Trilegal without actually having delved into Trilegal? So you co-founded Trilegal, over 2 decades ago? How many years?
25 years ago. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year.
Oh, wow, great. 2025. And so you started in 2000 with 5 other co-founders.
Yeah.
Right? And today you're what, 1,100? Roughly around that. My research seems to point out, but of course my research might be wrong.
We're over
About
1,000 lawyers,
right?
and we're about 140 plus partners.
140 plus partners. You're either, again, the largest or the second largest law firm in India. Would that be broadly accurate?
We're one of the largest law firms in India. There's no doubt about that.
You're a lawyer,
I'm only saying because I know what my numbers are.
Right.
It's we don't have we're not
Right.
publicly
Like
listed, and so it's hard to figure out who. And I don't want to misstate about my competition. So yeah, we're a large firm.
I got that. So and of course then this fact that of the top 5 law firms in India, which is Trilegal, Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas, Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas, Khaitan and Co, and AZB. You're the only one which doesn't have a person's name as the law firm.
and it is not, in some senses, owe its existence to a person or a family, etc. Which again is very interesting, and it goes back to 25 years ago. 6 of you decided to start a law firm. Why? What made you decide that you wanted to start a law firm of your own, and why was it not called any of your names? I know 6 people may be too much to have those all 6 people in a name, but still, why was it called Trilegal, and why did you folks decide to start a law firm?
Yeah. So look, I think the thing is that at that point in time, there were probably no law firms that did not have at least the name of the founder in the name of the firm. That was just the way you named firms. And you look to the US, you look to the UK, which is has a much older tradition. Even today, almost all the firms are named something and something. Now, we took a conscious decision to try and make a firm that was neutral to names. I think one of the reasons was there were 6 of us, and it would have been a very long name, and we would have put it alphabetically, and very selfishly, Matan would have been maybe the 4th or the 5th, and everything gets truncated to a 2-word name, and then my legacy would have gone. But very selfishly, that may be one of the reasons that I pushed for that. But I think honestly, all of us just decided that we were going to make this not about individuals and try and build an institution. And one of the first steps to doing that was to come up with a name that...
In 2000, where were all of you? You'd practiced, you were working at what? Dua and Associates?
I was working at Dua Associates.
How many years out of college were you? I mean, how many years had you been a professional?
So when I graduated from college, it was 1994. So I was a class of 94 from the National Law School, the second batch of National Law School. And I left Dua Associates in 1998. So I was 4 years qualified out of law school. And I left not really planning to set up Trilegal. I left because I felt that it would be better for me to set up my own practice than to work for Ranji Dua in Dua Associates. And some of the reasons for that probably will answer all the other questions that you've asked, because all 5 of us, the rest of us, all 6 of us, the other 5, had similar motivations in that they were working in different places, working for traditional Indian law firm operations. And they felt, and we all felt, that there was a need for something
different. Were you
different.
all classmates? How did you know each other? Professionally, as friends?
So, 4 of us, including me, were from National Law School. 2 were 1 year junior to me, but we knew each other in that sense. And then, so that was me and Prem, who were in Bangalore, Sridhar and Karan, who were my co-founders in Bombay, were all in National Law School. And so we knew each other over law school. And Anand and Akshay, who were our co-founders in Delhi, Anand worked in Dua Associates while I was there, so I got to know him over the Dua Associates period. And Akshay was working in a UK law firm called Ashus, and we had close relations with Ashus, and I'd done many deals with him, and he also was seconded for a year to Dua Associates. So really, it's that sort of an association. We knew each other through college and through work. We were all working in the traditional Indian, at that time, law firm setup, and we all rebelled against the way in which that those operations were set up.
What was that?
Well, largely...
What were you rebelling against?
So, I don't think we were consciously setting up to build Trilegal at that point in time. But what we were clear about was that we wanted to perform the law firm function in a different context from the way in which it was being performed in the firms that we were. We all had exposure to the way international firms operated, and international firms were much more professional, we felt, in the way in which they were providing their services. I'll give you one example.
Yeah.
Well, when I was given work by my senior in Dua Associates, very often I got given work that was already 2 weeks late. And I was told to turn it around. And of course, I turned it around within 24 hours. But I was like, look, if you'd given it to me 2 weeks ago at least,
I could have done a much better job of
it
it.
would have got them on time, right? I mean, even if it was a day late, it's better than getting to them a day late than getting to them 2 weeks late. And we felt that there was a certain professionalism that Indian firms lack. Now, this is 25 years ago, and this is not to say that any of the Indian firms are like this right now. But in those days, there was a lack of professionalism that we knew clients expected, but for some reason, we were not, Indian firms were not providing. I think the second thing was that we all struggled with the lack of clarity in terms of what our career progression was. Now, if you're 2 or 3 years qualified, it doesn't matter that much. I would argue that if you're 4 years qualified, it shouldn't have mattered, but it was irking me that there was no clear path to becoming a partner in this firm. It was 4 or 5 or even 6 years away at that point in time, but I had no clarity as to what it was that I had to do to qualify. Maybe all the other lawyers who joined the firm at the same time as me. What do I have to do to differentiate myself from them, such that the partners of the firm could say, okay, this is a bright guy, we can give it to him. And it was clear to me that I was getting signals from the management that I was good, because every now and then, the managing partner would say, look, I'm going to second you to England for 6 months so that you can get an experience. And then nothing would happen. And then next year I'll second you to Paris. And then when he said he'll second me to Tokyo, I said, okay, it's not going to happen. If I have to do these things, I have to do it myself. And so I said, I'm going to set up a firm. It was these two things, quite frankly. It was the need.
Was it something similar for your other co-founders as well?
All of them. All of them were in the same setup, the same framework. Partners operated with a sort of a glass ceiling. I wouldn't think it was a glass ceiling. It was probably a steel ceiling. There was couldn't even see through it. It was just not possible to breach that founder space, as it were. And for ambitious, capable young lawyers, at some point in time, this was galling. So the only path was really to wait a really long time to become a partner in one of these firms, or to take courage into your own hands and try and do it yourself. But in doing that, I think we were very clear that we didn't want to create something that was a copy of what all of these other things were. And the first step to doing that was taking our name out of it. Because once your name is in the title of the firm, then your children just have an edge over everyone else, because they share the name that's on the door. I wanted to take that out. And that's the reason why Trilegal. As much as I sort of said that I'm going to be fourth in the line and all that vanity, really the reason why we did that was to just take it off the table. That as we grow older, choices will change. We may think differently. We may have children, and we may feel differently at a later point. So let's take it all off the table. And we're not going to have our names, and our children are not going to get preference or priority. And that's the rule that holds today. All the founders have children who are in college or getting to the point where they could now start to say that, look, I want some preferential treatment here, and that's just not possible. They don't have a name, they can't claim anything. The way the equity is set up, they have no rights over the equity, and we can get into the structure and stuff like that.
But I just want to reflect that both of the reasons why all of you decided to start a new law firm together seem to be related to professionalism, because the first point that you mentioned about how work was assigned and how it could be done better so that it's more efficient and gets done on time is again related to professionalism. Right. And like you also pointed out, 25 years ago, it was a very different era. Perhaps firms were not as professional. And the second point also related to career progression, etc., comes back to again professionally managing careers and ambitions of people. I mean, you don't expect, like, for example, either a McKinsey or any other world leading organization to not offer this kind of clarity. So one part of why you decided to set up Trilegal was to make things more professional.
Correct.
Right? But at the same time, all 6 of you were also turning entrepreneurs. I keep coming back to this in spite of the fact that you keep saying we are just professionals, but you are launching a new business together. What was that like? Because when you're part of a law firm, you're getting a salary, you're getting work assigned. Now, suddenly, all of you are on your own. You're trilegal. No one's heard of trilegal. What does the business or the entrepreneurial side of starting a law firm look like in the first year or two?
Yeah, look, once again, I'm going to push back on entrepreneurialism again, because it was not that. I mean, it evolves into that because to me, at this stage, when there's the six of us, what are we thinking about? We're thinking about getting new clients, right? Because we've got to get
Which
revenue,
is entrepreneurial.
which is entrepreneurship, but it's also what any lawyer does, right? So anyone who hangs out his shingle wants to say, look, I'll whatever do your case for you, or I'll advise you on something, and it's as simple as that.
Episode 48, I traveled to Gurgaon before the smog apocalypse and met India Gold's Deepak Abbott. And the episode was titled Deepak Abbott on turning a nation's dead asset into credit scores and working capital. What was that dead asset? Well, gold. His company is literally called India Gold. And we talked about his evolution as an entrepreneur from literally buying CD-ROMs to working for large organizations in growth roles, including at Paytm, to coming together and starting India Gold with a very different vision, and then ending up where they are right now together with his co-founder Nitin, and how the amount of gold and statistics around gold that we discussed in this episode is just mind-boggling, right? India, if you thought that India was gold crazy, I think like some of the statistics in this episode will really get you. We know
Grew
each
up in-
other for
I know, I grew
over
up
10
in-
years, but like you
yes.
said, it's the first time that we're meeting in person today.
Yeah, and not many people know about my history that as such, because I haven't spoken about it. But I grew up in Ludhiana, Punjab, and was a small town boy, and then still very much Punjabi at heart. But then I moved to Delhi for my graduation. I was doing BCom from Delhi University, and that's when I was because I was doing BCom. The only other option was to do chartered accountancy, because I was good at maths. I was generally good with numbers. So I thought, let me try out CA, because there's no other career opportunity. Either you can be an engineer or a doctor, or
This
if
was
you're
late 90s.
this was 97, yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, let me do CA. And, I was doing pretty okay there. I was clearing all my exams one by one. I started with CA Foundation. I didn't wait for my graduation. So I was doing while I was getting graduated. Cleared Inter 1, Inter 2. I was clearing exams. But then the computer bug bit me. My mother, she used to work in a bank. And in their bank, they had a scheme where they would give 0% loan to employees for buying computers. And she just casually mentioned, yeah, let's buy one. So in 1997 I bought or 96 I bought my first computer, and that is the time when VSNL launched home internet in India. It was called a shell account, and I said, okay, let me try what this internet is. So I applied, and I they were only giving 15,000 connections, and I got it. And then I started using internet in 1996, and that's when I realized that why am I wasting time studying this CA? There's a lot more that can be done. And I started building websites and started doing some bit of coding, and totally lost interest in studies. Somehow I did my graduation. I did pretty okay there. And CA in final 2, I just dropped. I said, okay, I'll do it later. Let me first figure out if I can, build something in computers. And I used to play a lot of games, and I used to build a lot of websites. And that's when I got my first job. I was, even though I didn't apply for it, but I was, there's a market in Delhi called Nehru Place.
Yes.
We used to sell pirated games.
Yes, I've gone and like bought
Yeah.
PCs from there, and
Yeah. So I went to a market. I was buying few games. I was, negotiating with the guy. I was trying to, bring the price down. And there was a guy who was standing next to me. And he said, "You look like you are too much into gaming. You've been buying 10 games. What kind of games do you play? Can you recommend me some good games?" So we just were chatting, and said, "Okay, what do you do?" I said, "I'm right now just about to finish my graduation. I'm doing CA." He said, "Why don't you come and meet me in my office? We do something around gaming." I said, okay, I'll come and meet you. So I went there, and they used to import CD-ROMs.
because that was the only way India was, playing game. CD-ROM was the only way of playing. There was no internet to download games. I mean,
CD-ROM for listeners is a read-only
yes,
media. So it
yeah,
was a CD which comes pre
exactly.
recorded with something,
Correct.
and then you can't like rewrite on it again.
So they said we are importing games and we want someone who can, do game testing for us, in the sense that okay, these are the good games to import, or these are not just games but CDs, encyclopedias, and all sort of CDs. I said okay, this sounds interesting. So I got my first job. They were paying me $2,700, and I thought that's a very good pocket money while I do my CA and stuff like that. But then more I started going to office daily, I realized that okay, this is where I belong, and there's so much happening. This is the
I
future.
remember that era. The
Right.
magazines, the
Yeah,
internet.
I used to read computers at home. I used to read PC Quest, Data Quest.
Yes, and you would get CDs
and those
inside
CDs,
those.
and
That's
that
right.
world was crazy. I mean,
It was magical.
Yeah, it was magical, right? I mean, that I used to look forward to those CDs, and said, okay, I want to continue doing this. And I didn't tell my father or anyone at home that I'm dropping out of CA, because my father he was a banker and he wanted me to.
Oh, so both your mom and dad are bankers.
Yes.
Got it.
And they obviously wanted me to either join a bank or become a CA, because that's the only thing that they could think of. So that was the starting point. And then there was no looking back. From there, I got another job and then started doing full-time web designing for Times Internet. IndiaTimes.com. It was the, Yahoo of India back then. India Times and Rediff were the only internet companies. So was really excited to join them in 1998 or 99 maybe. 98, yeah. Yeah, and there's no looking back. Then I stayed in technology, internet. I'm mostly done gaming and consumer products.
Very interesting. So you were at Times Internet for about 4 years. Then I think you were briefly a user experience consultant
I
with
went to
Satyam.
Satyam. Yeah, this was pre Satyam, went into that
Right,
scam or fraud.
Right, 2.5
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
Then you were at Zapak, which was a gaming.
It was a Reliance Entertainment's venture, the Anil
Right,
Ambani's Reliance.
right.
And yeah, for 7 years, we built games. And this was obviously.
That was the longest you were in an organization,
Yes,
right?
because see, gaming gaming was very, very close to my heart. In fact, even today it's close to my heart. It's just that I,
Don't have the time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get the time. Plus,
all right, if you had the time, what game would you love to play?
I love sports games.
Oh,
I
okay.
like NBA, I like baseball, I like
Got
cricket, and, those kind of games. I'm not much into action, even though back then I used to play all the action games. But today, if I have to play a game, I would rather play a sports game, which is much easier on my mental health. So 7 years, but it was like, I think we were far ahead of the time. We were trying to launch MMOGs, which required a lot of data, good data connection, and that was not the time when we had broadbands at home, and 3G didn't exist. 2G was also patchy. Internet was very expensive. So we tried launching gameplexes where people could come and play games. And again, the game distribution was uh, controlled by telcos. The only way you could actually make people play game was through telco portals, which also means that 60% of the revenue was used to go to telcos. In some cases, as high as 80%. So they were like the gatekeepers, kind of,
Yes.
Similar to Free Basics, right? I mean,
Yes.
they would decide which game to push.
There's also the VAS era in mobile.
It was
right?
the vast era in mobile, and that was the era where telcos really
Even
exploited.
Paytm came up from that era itself.
Exactly,
right? Like
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, 197 used to do that,
That's
right?
right.
But very similar to what Free Basic was trying to do, right? I mean, telcos were the gatekeeper. They were controlling which games, based on what money, how much money they were making from a game, right? So the full creative potential of building games was not coming through, and we tried for 7 years, and we started building games for international market, which is much easier. But then after doing games for 7 years, where the market was not growing, the internet was still very, very patchy. I got an opportunity to join Paytm. Again, very early days. Paytm was just, Vijay had just coined the term Paytm. They were experimenting with mobile recharges, and that's when I joined. And the good part was, when I joined, we decided that we'll build an app. There were hardly any Androids in India. Like literally, I would say less than 1 lakh phones. And Vijay, being a visionary, said, let's invest in the app today, learn how it works. While it sounds fancy, you only have international apps, but let's see, how it goes. While we'll continue to focus on mobile web and web, but let's see. And I was very excited because I got to do something that I had never thought in, build apps, because I'd only built games for telcos through Java J2ME, which were very boring. I'm boring in the sense the way you would target. There's no way to go to end customers. Here it was, product. First time I was building a B2C product where you had access to customers. And the good part was because Paytm was the first big app that came from India. Everyone supported it, from Google to Google through Play Store. And when we started advertising in Facebook, we're getting installs for about 2 rupees, 1.5 rupees CPI.
What is it right now?
It would
these
be
days?
close to 120 rupees, maybe 100 rupees easily, right?
Per install.
Yeah, at that time it was 1.5 rupees, right? And because everyone who would see the ad, and if they had the phone, obviously they only see the ad if they had the phone, they say, "Oh, Paytm, what is this? Let me install the app." And that's where
We're also a different era where people would install the app because
they would install the app because there were
weren't
hardly any
bombarded.
apps, right? I mean,
Exactly.
they were like saying, "Okay, one more app, let me try and download this app." So while it was easier to acquire customers, we used it as a testing ground. We learned a lot how the behavior in app is different from mobile web or desktop web. And I think those 2 years were like a bigger than any MBA or any other learning that I would have ever done so far in my career. Very accelerated learning, and very thankful to the opportunity that I had back then. So yeah, early days, but very, very, and that's when I started writing as well, because I was so excited about doing newer things. I thought, okay, let me share this with people. Let me see the kind of feedback that I get, because I thought, because that was again the era where information was not easily available. So I used blogs to interact with people. I used to, share my blogs with people
This was
and
also
share the
pre
feedback.
everything getting closed up in the walled gardens of
Exactly.
Facebook, etc., and all that, where people would still blog in the open and leave
Exactly.
comments.
Yeah, and yeah, I think then 2014 I thought, okay, met Satyan at Times Internet. Said, why do we want to incubate something interesting, some product around again B2C product? Would you be keen to build? So it was kind of a semi-entrepreneurship kind of an opportunity where they said, okay, we'll give you some fixed funding. It'll be incubated 100% by Times Internet, but it'll come totally independent. And that's when I built this new app called Smart App. The idea back then was, again, this is 2014 when Jio was not
Pre-Geo.
pre-Jio, and Airtel had almost 200 prepaid plans. Vodafone had 300. Everyone had a lot of prepaid plans. No one understood how the prepaid plans would work. Some would have data, some would have SMS, some would have talk time, some data top up. And people were always confused. They were buying multiple packs. They were buying data pack, they were buying voice packs, SMS pack, and so on and so forth. We said we'll make it easier for you. You don't need to decide which pack you need to buy. We'll evaluate based on how many calls you make, what kind of websites you access, what kind of data you access, how many SMS you send. We'll bundle 2 or 3 packs and give you one single pack. You spend 299 and we'll bundle the packs for you. It worked really well. I mean, it was like I said, a instant success. We got million installs in about 6 months. And that's when I realized that, this data gathering from the mobile, who do you talk to, what kind of apps you use, people are really keen to know more about it. So instead of just recommending packs to them, we started also sharing this information with them. And that's when we took the app global as well, where we just share simple things like, oh, you consume X MB of internet today, you are on roaming and your data plan, you're running out of data plan, and these are the websites that you see, and this is where like, if the equivalent of iOS screen time that you have today.
Yep.
So we back then, and that app became very, very successful in even countries like China and Japan. We were number one app in almost 10, 15 countries, clocking about $10,000 revenue a day. And that then again, Jio
came.
happened, and they said, okay, just 299, you get everything. So the utility of the app, the core fundamental
Why
utility of the
bother
app
tracking
disappeared.
anything?
And in about 6 to 7 months, that app started seeing a decline. And that's when I thought, okay, let me go back to Paytm. And I met Vijay, said, "Arey, वापस आ जा, कुछ, we are on a different journey now, different scale, so you'll enjoy." And this was pre-demonetization. I didn't know that what's about to come. So I joined 2 weeks before the demonetization happened. And then, yeah, like I said, rest is history. I mean, demonetization happened and then everything just took off.
Got it. To come back to entrepreneurship and India Gold,
You and Nitin, right? You're both co-founders.
Yes.
Right. Great. Now, this is tricky, right? Because, I mean, of course, all co-founder relations are tricky, but when there are two co-founders with no titles running, both of you need an enormous amount of trust and belief and respect in each other to make things work, right? Because no one from the outside will know what are the amount of stress that co-founders go through, right? How do you guys, what is the unsaid and the said and the de-risking part in this, that when you decide to come together and said, I mean, I'm sure at some point it must have been a discussion saying that no titles, we'll
Yeah.
both be co-founders.
Yes.
This is what I'll do, this is what you will do, this is how we'll make sure that we don't like end up fighting, etc. What is that in whatever form you can tell us?
So I think when we initially used to tell our VCs when they invested, they said, who's the CEO? Who's the CPO CEO? I said, we don't have any CXOs. And we'll never, and I'm repeating it again, we'll never take that title. Both of us will never be either the CEO, CPO, CEO, because we want our teams to have some aspiration that they can become CXOs. So we will never take that title. So we were very sure that, okay, that's not the reason why we are building India Gold. The reason we are building India Gold is want to, see this huge opportunity that we have in front of us. Can we execute that in a way where it becomes a meaningful outcome? And title anyways wouldn't matter. If this is successful, we'll get our due share, right? And if it is not successful, I don't want to use the title CEO on LinkedIn and get another job after this. So for us, it's not that I'm looking at another stint after this, that I need to have some sort of a designation or some sort of a title. And the second part was that both of us have our own core competencies. He's pretty good at managing external operations. He's good at managing people. I am good at doing my own thing, building stuff, exploring new technologies and working with product people. Kind of an introvert. He's also an introvert, but he's more outgoing. He
managed to
rallies the
hide it
team.
well.
He rallies the team really well, and he understands operational nitty-gritties really well. He enjoys that part. I hate that part. So it happened organically. Things that he enjoy, he continues doing that. He doesn't like to get into. He is full of ideas, but he doesn't like to. Okay, let me write the PRD. He's not that kind of a guy. He said, "This is the idea, just two-line idea. Please build the PRD. Let's take this product live, but broadly, this is what I want." So we were very clear, and that really helped because we're not getting into each other's territory, and we were only getting into each other's territory to give an outside-in view, which both of us appreciated. Right? Sometimes you are building stuff and doing thing and you don't really get the real feedback. But since we didn't, unlike most of the employees, they sometimes feel uncomfortable sharing the hard truth or bad news. We said, okay, one thing that we'll do openly is to share bad news with each other openly. When I say bad news, anything that goes wrong, let's be very open about it. And that's the principle that kept us together. In fact, I think we are very, very good friends. We socially also connect, very close to each other's family, so that also helps. And we've gone through some tough times, and that really brings you together. In fact, we never really had a moment where we disagreed with each other on a broader topic. Somehow we always aligned to the same vision, same way of execution, same broader thought. Yes, on a day-to-day basis you might have different paths every day, but we've aligned to each other's thinking in last now we're working for like 10 years together, right?
That's including the time at
including
Paytm
the time
as
at
well.
Paytm. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, you and Nitin came together. How do you find your first 10 colleagues?
Yeah, I think I was lucky, like I said, since working at Paytm, plus I was writing my own blog and I was having decent followership on Twitter. I was able to attract a couple of guys who were interested to work with me and Nitin. So first team happened through my interactions with people on Twitter, and mostly interns. In fact, the most interesting part is that the first intern that we hired for product, he went on to become the CPO of our company. In about 5 years, from intern, 10,000 rupees a month internship to the highest paid employee in the company, and who owns about 1.5% of the company. That's how that person grew. And nothing makes me happier than seeing, like, because that's the vision me and Nitin had. And how can we see our team members growing to a level where they become CXOs instead of we grabbing those titles and not letting people grow? So
Why is that so important to both of you?
I think it gives the team something to look forward. They have the aspiration that, can I be the CEO? Can I be the CXO? They can
Why
execute,
do you care so much for that?
because you want people who work with you for long term. You don't want people who come and go, and the attrition is high. So
What is your long-term vision for both of you?
I think we'll continue the way we are right now, no titles, and we continue to take India Gold to a place where uh, everyone creates value. Employees with through ESOPs, our investors. We obviously also should get some meaningful outcome out of it. But that's like a next 4 to 5 years vision. But we have a lot to do right now. Like I said, we'll
Got
be
it.
getting into building our own book. That will require a lot of. It's like day zero for us on the third business line, and that's where I think we are now again starting from scratch.
And finally, the last episode of 2025, Ixigo's Alok Bajpai on using empathy, customer experience, and resilience to both survive and thrive. As it turns out, we were trying to meet for a while, but Alok was in Bengaluru, so we recorded in Bengaluru. And it was a great experience for me because Alok has said, I mean, many people have said he himself of Ixigo being, in some senses, like a cockroach startup. It's the startup that wouldn't die. It's the startup that kept on evolving and pivoting. How? By just listening to its customers, by having empathy, by just trying to be a better organization. And I think that's a great lesson because I think most of the times a lot of entrepreneurs and founders or investors or others feel that growth must come by looking at something, a target or a goal which is in the future. I want to get X percentage of this market share, etc. But I think within Ixigo, you sort of see that they very naturally and organically evolved from their core principles, and they continue to kind of stay in touch with their real market and grow. A great conversation.
Alok, I discovered something as in the course of my research, which is that when you were at IIT, you were really interested in ethical hacking.
Yes, I was.
And that got you banned from the computer center at IIT Kanpur.
For a few months, yes.
What exactly were you doing? And tell me about the computer lab and tell me what the order or which professor called you up and told you that you're banned from the computer center.
So you're good with your research, Rohin. But I actually enjoyed discovering new technological powers, let's put it that way. And this was, I think, the year 1998 or 1999. The internet was very new. We were the first batch at IIT Kanpur to actually even get email addresses and access. Me and a couple of friends used to hang around in the computer center figuring out how Linux works and how you could actually go around the system and do things, although we never used it for doing anything nasty. But we once got caught, having root access to a machine.
I was about to say, were you trying to get root access? And then you said it.
Yes. Yeah. And, I think we were out of the computer center for a couple of months because of that. But I think we also built a very good bond with the sysadmin there because of this incident. Yeah.
It seems like such a quaint concept, right? The entire concept of computer labs. Because I remember it back from school and from colleges where labs were a thing. You take off your shoes, go inside.
Yeah.
There was dedicated time and it was really valuable because it was almost like, wow, in this time, this machine is mine and I can do whatever I want to do with it.
Yeah, those were the days. We used to get time slots where we could print batch jobs.
Yes. Yes. I remember my earliest memories of computer labs in school were where you had these dot matrix printers and you had these software that would allow you to print banners on long running which you could stick up in your room.
Yes.
Right. So that
ASCII art and all
that's right. ASCII art and all that. Well, I mean, that's another era. Well, so that was that. You getting banned from the IIT Kanpur computer lab for a few months. Second, your company, it's Ixigo, but the actual name for the company is Le Travenews. Does Le Travenews come because you were in the French Riviera for the first 5 years of your career?
Partially, yes. So actually, the story goes as follows. Rajneesh and I, we quit our jobs and came back to India 2006 and we were registering the company.
And it so happened that the ROC did not like that we were just calling it Travenues Technology Limited. They said this is a generic name, although I had my view on that because Travenues is also travel plus avenues. But they said, please add something in the beginning to make it more unique. And we were left with a choice of what do we add, right? And we just come from France, and everything had a le or a la in front of it. So we just went with le, and the ROC approved it. So that's the story.
And this is the thing. I sometimes wonder what are these rules that the ROC is applying, because similar things have come up with the Ken as well when we try to apply, or even the earlier company that like they will always reject it for the reasons and this is too common. And then you're thinking, who else has this? Because I searched for it, I couldn't find anything. And then you have to just add something to it, and then some random thing that you add in the spur of the moment ends up becoming a listed company like 20 years later.
Absolutely. And a lot of debate happened just before the DRHP filing that should we change the name, right? Because people were like, okay, now you could probably call it Ixigo Limited. But, I think at that time we said this name has carried us well so far. It's probably going to carry us well from here as well. So we decided to just continue living with it. And, in a way, we are a house of brands, house of companies in some sense, because we acquired also other businesses and brands. So this becomes also the mothership in that sense.
All right. French Riviera, La Travenues, Alok Banchpai, welcome to First Principles. Thank you so much for being here in Bangalore this December morning. I appreciate it. We've been trying to get together for this for a while. I'm finally glad that it happened, and actually happened in a time where it looks like the Indian travel sector is sort of going through this incredible churn on account of the meltdown that Indigo had. Ixigo listed last year and is doing really well on the stock markets. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell me, when did Ixigo... Next year, will you be 20 years old? Is that right? 2016 is when you started?
So we actually started working on the idea in 2006. So in that sense, yes, next year we'll be 20 years from the time we started working on it.
Sorry, 2006. I said 2016. My bad.
2006.
Yeah.
And we launched in 2007. So in that sense, 19 years from launch next year.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you some basic questions about Ixigo.
Okay.
Right? Ixigo is, of course, a listed company. It's a travel company because that's how people see it from the outside. But how would you... What is Ixigo really as a company? How would you describe it?
I think Ixigo is born out of the passion to help travelers out in terms of, the pain areas that exist right from the time you start thinking of a trip to while you're on it, right? So before, during, and after the trip, there's lots of pain and agony that travelers go through to sort out the smallest of things. And I think Ixigo is born out of the passion to help solve that. The avatar in which we've been solving it has obviously evolved over time. But the ethos remains the same, right? That we want to build the company that provides the best customer experience to travelers, right? And I think in that endeavor, we have obviously entered several categories in a very unique way. But if you think about the very long term, right, I think the companies that deserve to win are the ones that actually build the best customer experience in that space. And that's been the common sort of passion for all the Ixigems that are working on this.
Ixigems?
Yes.
What is that?
That's how we call our employees.
Oh, okay. The reason I was asking is because you're also a house of brands. So I thought perhaps the brands are called Ixigems. But I get it. We'll come to this later because one of the running strands across all your conversations in the past has been the importance of culture and employees. So I totally get why they're called Ixigems. But let me come back to Ixigo. Give us a sense of Ixigo's scale right now.
Well, last year, almost 550 million annual active users, which means half of people who use internet in India actually used us at least once. would have used at least one of our apps or brands or platforms, at least once. And if I look at a monthly active number, we have more than 80 million monthly active users. We are doing transactions that are essentially now in terms of the number of passengers that we move around from one point to another in India across train, flight, bus, right? We'd be doing close to 150 million annualized passengers that are being transported from point A to point B in India. So in that sense, we have significant penetration in the market. And in terms of downloads also, we have the most downloads in our space. So we've crossed more than 700 million downloads across our apps and continue to be the fastest growing, both in terms of usage and in terms of the transaction value that flows through us. So last quarter, we did close to 4,400 crores of gross transaction value. So on an annualized basis, you can think of it as about 18,000 crores of annualized gross transaction value flowing through us.
You also have a very strong Bharat theme which runs across ixigo. How would you explain that? How do you...
So if you think about why we do what we do, one of the reasons is that we believe that the Western template of building an OTA was a bit flawed in the Indian context. Because if you look at the established norm on how online travel platforms globally got built, people would first launch a flight booking experience, whether on web or app, acquire users, and then they would sell hotels to make money. And this was an established norm in US, in Europe, even in India. The first batch of OTAs were doing just that. I think we realized at one point in our journey, and I think this was around 2012-13 when mobile internet was taking off, that if you look at the penetration of air in the country, back then this was sub 3%. Today that number is close to 4.5% of the population that flies every year. If you look at even China, which is 37%, US is in the 80s, we are very underpenetrated as a market when it comes to air. What that means is that travel for an average Indian may not even relate to getting on a flight at all, right? And that was the insight that came to us while we were building this. And we realized that why is nobody building a train-first OTA in the Indian context? Because the first port of call for any Indian to go on any vacation, journey, pilgrimage, etc., is to get on a train and then figure out after they reach there, typically they figure out their accommodation. This is how we all grew up, in our journeys. And I come from a tier 2 middle class family.
For me, the highlight of my childhood was summer vacations where we would travel from Delhi to Kerala by 2+ days, 2.5 days of train up and down. But it was essentially train all the way throughout childhood.
And it was a very joyous experience, right? As a child.
It was hot and humid and dusty, but it was joyous.
It was joyous.
And that's a wrap. If any of these conversations sparked your interest, well, how could they not? You can find the links to the full episodes in the show notes. Thank you for being part of the First Principles journey this year. We'll see you in 2026. I promise you, we have a much, much wider, broader, and interesting set of conversations in 2026 as well. Happy holidays.
If you've been a long-time listener to this podcast and are glad we're back, do tell the world by sharing this episode with everyone you think will find it valuable. Produced by Udantika Kashyap and mixed and mastered by the wonderful Rajiv CN, our resident sound engineer. This is me, Rohin Dharmakumar, signing off. We'll be back soon with another episode.